I think we talked a bit before we went on air, but for me personally, this was really cool because one, I haven't talked to you for a long time.
Yeah.
If ever at all, like properly, right? And at the same time, I've known you for a long time, and vice versa. And I think for me personally, one of the biggest draws for doing this and just where I'm at in my life is this theme around, like, I guess, Asian masculinity and what that really means. And I look at, from afar at least, what you've kind of gone through over the last, call it 5 to 7 years. You have a family now. We were just talking, you just had a second child. Yep. You have successfully operated and sold and exited a business, so I think financially you are okay at least, right? Right. And it's so easy. I've been there. I think you've been there, but it's so easy to come to the city and just get caught up in a different type of masculinity, which is the bottles at fill in the blank.
I mean, I came to the city in 2002.
Okay.
So it was extremely easy to get caught up in.
20 years now, man.
I mean, 18, but I feel like I've seen different phases of Shanghai, but that part doesn't ever change.
No, it doesn't. And you see fresh meat these days, right?
I mean, I don't get to see fresh meat these days, but I do get to see the phases, whether that's a city, whether that's to your point, the crowd that comes in. And I feel like it's not only myself that's matured through this process, but also I think the city has really kind of morphed and found its own identity. I think China as a whole, of course, has done that. But you feel like every city now has, okay, these are the aspects that I want to be known for, throughout China, whether you're Shenzhen, whether you're Shanghai, whether you're Beijing, and of course, even the Western cities like Chengdu or whatnot. They're more confident as they age, in terms of how they want to market that side. And I think, early on when I first came, it just feels like a free-for-all, right? Everybody's just like, come here and I can do everything from A to Z. Now people aren't offering A to Z. No. They understand that there's no value in saying we can do anything from A to Z. Here are the things that we're good at. Here are the things that I want to develop. We have some possibilities for you if you care to come to our city.
Dude, so you came here like really young. Like you were like
straight out of university.
I was when I first came here.
Exactly the same age actually. I came out when I was 23, so straight out of university. Just happened to have relatives that wanted to do a business venture here and asked me if I wanted to join up.
At what point, I mean, this is just purely from my own curiosity, because I'm getting there. I'm on like 7.5 now, right? At what point were you kind of just like, okay, well, you know what, fuck it, this is home now?
So I came out here in 2002 because I had relatives that had an opportunity to start a KFC franchise. They had. I've
heard about this on Just
And then they asked me to come out. I actually didn't want to come out to Asia in the beginning.
Dude, 2002 is very different than coming now.
Well, I won 2002. I was pretty comfortable in Canada. I'm very fond of Toronto. Now, I come to Asia every summer, every other summer as a kid. So I was pretty in tune with Chinese in terms of the culture and the language side, but that was more on the Taiwan side.
Okay.
I actually never made a trip to China till the summer of 2002, which was, 4 months before I came out to China to explore this supposed business venture. So it was one of those big decisions, probably the first real big decision that I ever had to make.
Sure.
I decided to give it a go for reasons of really more family pressure than anything, if I'm being honest. I came out and, the first year I just kind of deep dived into figuring out what China was about. And then looking at the KFC franchising opportunities, going through the orientation and whatnot. And
so you had your head on right. Dude, my first year here was a blur.
Well, you came out at a different time.
Yeah.
I would say that in 2002 was probably easier to focus.
Maybe.
Yeah, right? Yeah. But, for us, it was, at least for me, it was first of all, understand the culture, adjust to the culture, decide if this is for me or not, because I already had reservations, as I mentioned, prior to coming.
Dude, you went about this so analytically. That's actually very impressive for 23.
I think it was more. I mean, that's a great way to put it, but I think it was more. I was always questioning why I even agreed to come out here in the first place.
Sure.
So I felt like, okay, if I'm going to make it, I need to understand, what it takes.
Yeah.
And back to your original question.
Yeah. When
first year, I went back and forth. It was. I'll see after year one whether I want to stay or go back to Toronto. And in year one of me coming out, decided that the KFC franchising opportunity was not something that was suited for me and my relative.
Sure.
Given where we were in our lives, given the amount of money that it would have been required to have partaken in that. Yeah. And we actually ended up taking a different tangent and following his father on a real estate kind of path.
I heard about this too. Yeah.
So that was most of year two for me. And at the same time, I was also getting ready to... first of all, we had to deal with SARS. So that was about
this was
almost
SARS.
like a 6-month pause in this whole China journey, because I was in Taiwan during SARS.
Dude, so COVID's like nothing for you then. You're like, I've seen that much work.
I wouldn't go that far, but I've certainly had some experience because of SARS, right?
Yeah.
But it was just coincidence that we were going to Taiwan for Chinese New Year's, and then the whole SARS thing really kicked up in China, and then we just decided not to come back for about 6 months. So I had about a 6-month hiatus in there. When we resumed, we were fairly certain that we weren't going to do the KFC franchising opportunities, and then we started deep diving more into the old homes, the old garden homes, concession home type of market. Yeah. So I took 2003 to 2004, mostly focusing on that, as well as starting to explore alternative F&B chain franchise type of opportunities. And while also debating, should I stay, should I go?
Yeah.
We ended up towards the end of 2003, we ended up finding some opportunities. And then I would say sometime around the middle part of 2004, we actually looked at one opportunity that we thought was a good opportunity. And the idea there then was for me to make a decision at that point, right? Like, am I going to stay here and pursue this opportunity and put roots down? Or am I going to say, hey, you know what? I came out here, I checked it out, but it's not for me. The opportunity at the time was a coffee brand called Illy. They had basically done distribution for the core part of their business, but they had these branded stores that they had in Europe already, and they wanted to bring to China, because everybody wants to bring things to China, right?
They still do.
They still do. And we were in a unique position to be able to open the first store in China.
Oh, no shit.
And it was a 15 square meter coffee shop, Italian design, in the Jingmao Tower. Back when the Jingmao Tower still...
It was the hottest property probably, right?
Are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, Jingmao was the shit in China, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
And they carried themselves that way, if you talk to the Lee Tseng department, if you talk to... and then they also have that SOE feel about them, right? Like, we have to navigate that. We negotiated a corner spot, which is more catering to the office than the traditional Starbucks model, which is a bigger shop where people can sit. And so this model is not foreign to you, because you're from North America and you see these office type models. But at that time,
the lobby
model simply wasn't in vogue. Starbucks was the only people trying it because, well, they're Starbucks. They get to try things.
Sure.
For us, this is something that we thought, okay, well, given the design, the stature of where we want to position the brand, Jingmao was a great fit, and we felt like we can pull it off because the people who worked in Jingmao at that point, the tenants, they had a good mix of international and domestic companies, people with good income. We could probably tap into their let's say growing curiosity for the coffee lifestyle, and luckily for us that worked out. But bring it back. Yeah, at that point, I was like, okay, should I put money down on this, try to grow this as a business? And if I do, obviously I'm going to be here for a while. Or should I go back? And, I felt I needed to make that decision for myself mentally, because up until that point, I definitely still had more than one foot out the door.
Yeah.
I felt I wasn't even giving China necessarily 100%.
Right.
I was always just thinking, I'm going to do this because I felt obligated.
Sure. Yeah.
But at that point, I was like, you know what?
That family guild is fucking strong.
Right. Oh, no. I mean, I can go on a story about that, but my cousin laid that shit thick on me,
That's what a podcast is for.
So I basically decided, okay, at that point, China's growing. It's not necessarily what I was comfortable with. And, that's a trip to say about Shanghai. But yeah, in 2003, Shanghai back then, I wasn't sure. It's one of the reasons why we never did KFC.
Right.
Because all of the franchising opportunities actually were in tier 2, tier 3 cities.
Right.
And, I felt like that model, especially given the asking price, it was fine. Probably if you were in your 40s, 50s, 60s, you had a little nest egg that you accumulated through your career, your business, and you want to put it in some place where you're willing to relocate to a small town, more rural area, and make that work over time, right?
You understood all this at 24?
I wasn't necessarily just me. Obviously I have my uncle here, my cousin here, and they're both older to me. My uncle has always been kind of a guiding figure in my life. I don't know if I go as far as calling him a role model, but like that, right? And so I had one of the benefits. It was a very tumultuous relationship, I think, while I was working with my relatives. But one of the most valuable things I think I got out of that time period together was, I grew up in a fairly simple family. Sure. My parents, my dad worked for a company for most of his life.
Right.
My mom was a stay-at-home mom, full-time mom. Yeah. Great for me, but not necessarily. Yeah, great for me, but not necessarily inspirational. Not necessarily aspirational in terms of giving you lofty goals, giving you kind of clear aspirations to emulate, right? And so I had to seek elsewhere for that. And my uncle was always kind of one of those figures for me. And
isn't that so important?
It is. It's extremely important to have people you look up to, people you aspire to be. I think whether that's in life, whether that's in family, whether that's in love, I felt for myself, I've always had to look elsewhere. And not that my family didn't try to provide it, but maybe I never connected with some of those areas. Right. And I needed to seek, inspirations or models outside of my immediate family.
I think that's normal. I think we were designed that way. Like evolution has designed us in our teenage years to start wandering away from the tribe. Right. Like that is how humanity has spread across the globe in many ways, right? Some have stayed, some have gone home. What I have found really interesting as you explain this is I'm starting to kind of see how your brain works a little bit in real time, right? Because I know Kelly a little bit. I don't know her very well, but I can see how that partnership would work now. And the fact that you were able to do this at 24, dude, you met me at 24. I was a fucking shithead. I was not, going through these analytical if-and clauses at 24.
No, I mean, I'm maybe putting it that way.
It
was not that complicated. Right? It was more like everybody.
Sure.
I'm figuring my life.
Yeah.
Right. I'm trying to.
But the fact that you tried to do that at 24 is fucking incredible.
Well, back to what we were saying earlier. I think a big part of it was my initial reservations or hesitations about even wanting to come out here in the first place.
Sure.
So I was always questioning that. Like, well, I don't want to be here. Or if it were up to me, I would have not come. So there was always that need to say, like, well, I need to give myself, not anybody else, I need to give myself a reason to stay.
Yeah.
I need to give myself a strong enough motivation to say, like, okay, this is why I'm doing it. And then even if I decided, hey, you know what? No, it's not for me. I'm going to go back to Toronto.
Yeah.
I want to have a strong enough case to tell people that, I mean, I care about, I want to tell people that I care about that.
Right.
This is why I've decided
Right.
to go back.
Yeah.
Not just because, fuck it, I just came out because you told me to. And
yeah. No, I understand. For me, this podcast, I think what we just talked about, this is a clear example of why I want to do this podcast. I have walked my route, and by every measure with you, I would consider you successful, and somebody to look up to. You seem happy. Mm-hmm. You seem relatively well off. You seem to have a family you're very happy with. Mm-hmm. You had a career you're very happy with, and yet you took such a different route than I did. And I'm trying to fucking learn. Like having Howie on here, having Justin on here, like a lot of these men who are older than me. For me, this is a learning process, right? Because I did not have all this shit when I was young. It was me and my mom since I was 6.
Right.
No dad, no uncle, no role model on TV, no role model on podcasts.
I had heard on their previous podcast about this.
Yeah, a little. Yeah. So just having you on here and hearing this, it in my head, it's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I've kind of walked through probably the worst part now in my life, but here's somebody else who's walked it very differently and has come out very well on the other end.
I mean, I can't say I grew up in the same situation because I didn't. But, as I alluded to earlier, a lot of times for me, I looked at certain scenarios. For example, if it was, let's say, I grew up, obviously, I was born in Asia, but I grew up mostly abroad. I left Taiwan when I was 6. Okay. And so... being an immigrant family, having a very traditional Asian value family, with that comes the Western side of things, which is a stark contrast on how the families, let's say, express love, express support, express their aspiration in their kids, and I think me going to a Western educational route, especially earlier on in my life, where there's less asked, maybe academically, more explored, let's say, in terms of balance, in terms of, what are your interests, what are your likes, and what are your dislikes, versus the dynamic at home, where it was always just like, okay, well, just because we're not in Asia anymore doesn't mean I don't care about your grades.
Right, yeah.
I remember the first time, I probably shared this story before, but, the first report card that my father ever saw in Toronto, it was graded A, B, C, D, E, rather than in a numerical format, right?
Yeah.
And he saw this letter, and he's like, so wait, I mean, an A is 80 to 100.
Yeah.
So what'd you get?
Yeah.
Did you get 80?
Yeah.
Did you get 90? Did you get 100? I was like, I don't know. Fucking grade
it's
4.
An A. It's the best one.
I don't care.
Well,
grade 4.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I need to know.
Yeah.
Because, he grew up, and my father was a product of 师范学校. So what that is that basically you went to high school at the government's expense, but then you were obligated after you graduated from high school to teach for 2 years before you can move on to
giving back.
Giving back, yeah. And so as a former teacher for 2 years, he saw himself as a guy who maybe needs to demand a little bit more from his kids.
Sure.
So for him, he's like, well, in Taiwan, anything below 96, it's terrible. So I need to know. What
96 is that what it's at? Dude,
no, because I guess at that point, even like the bad kids in class get like 85. Right. Like if you want to be quote unquote one of the better students, I mean you're according to him. I don't know because I never went to school in Asia, but according to him, he's like a 98 and above is the only acceptable score, right? Damn. It's just to the decimal point.
I don't think I've ever got there. Your dad would not be very happy with me.
Well, that dynamic, and I think whether it's expression of support or care, I think in Asian families in general versus my Western family counterparts. So I grew up with mostly Caucasian friends. And so what I saw in their family dynamic, what I saw in let's say, North American culture, whether it's in the movies, whether it's in society. It was a very stark contrast. And, because you grew up in that fabric, you kind of yearn to have that in your own life.
Sure,
because it's a sense of belonging, it's a
Yes.
sense of want.
Yes.
But you know that...
Oh, shit. This is not okay. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
I've got to turn this off. First time it's ever happened.
Sorry. It's all right.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah, the sense of want, that you kind of say, okay, I want that for myself.
Yes.
And then at some point, whether you like it or not, or I think most people, maybe not everybody, whether you like it or not, you realize that there are limitations to what your own dad or mom is able to give you versus what you've imagined in your mind as this ideal family.
What Bobby's parents would have given him.
Right. And I think part of that is youth. As a kid, you don't always think about the alternative.
Yes.
You just see the things you want to see,
Yeah.
right?
You're
And
young.
then part of it is you also kind of come to grips with, okay, maybe I just need to make some concessions. Maybe I need to understand that some of these things are just not going to happen for me. And then you at a very early age maybe need to, and there's varying degrees on how much of that you have to go through, but you need to just decide, okay, well, how am I going to deal with this?
Yes.
And anyways, one of the things that I found, I sought solace and I found comfort in was, I spend more time at, friends, families, places and whatnot, to gain some of that.
Can I ask
dynamic?
you how this affects you being a father? Let me put my position out there. You may have heard this if you listen to the podcast. I'm not at a point where I don't know if I want to have kids. Like I would lean no.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that position.
Yeah. But I love children and I love people who have children, right? So how, I'm assuming you're not going to raise your kids the way you were raised. I think that's a given.
Yes.
But how much of that culture are you going to take? Is this something you and your wife talk about, or?
I think
are you
now that
them?
I am a parent, okay, I think I understand that what you imagine yourself to be as a parent is very different from when you're actually in the situation.
Sure, yeah.
You
for imagine you're going to be fair, loving.
Right.
And
I definitely, so I grew up in a pretty big, larger family context. Okay. It's one of the reasons why I came out to Asia every other summer or so, to Taiwan, because, as a family dynamic, there's a lot of need to gather together to stay close.
Sure.
And obviously that also helped tremendously later on with my transition here in China. But, we have that as a fabric of what I think family should be.
Okay.
Which is a closer bond, which is not only to your immediate family, but also to your relatives. And then again, that also led me to make the decision to come to China much against my own personal will, right? There's that. And then there is, let's say, the good that as you reflect later on that you felt like, whether it's the Asian stereotypes of raising a family or my own direct experience, you think about, okay, these are the things that maybe at the time, even myself, I did not agree with. But I've come to understand that
the value
later on, okay, you know what? Nobody fucking knows what they want when they're 10. Nobody really knows what they want when they're 12. And you have all the reasons at that particular point of your age to say, like, I don't care about this.
Right.
One of the things that...
that was a good age, man. 10? Yeah.
Well, for me, I felt like as a kid, my parents were fairly liberal with me, especially given some of the experiences of some of my other friends who were Chinese.
Asian friends.
I felt like I had it relatively easy. My parents were pretty... Not that they approved of most things that I did, but they're willing to let me explore or willing to let me figure things out for myself. It probably helped that I had a sister who conformed to what they saw as an ideal.
What does she do now?
So she's she got into accounting, and then
nice.
It's a very very safe, traditional kind of Asian family direction.
She probably brought a lot of honor to the family.
Yeah, so I'm very lucky that I had a younger sister who can let's say offset all the failures that my parents saw me. Growing up,
gives you a little more buffer.
But I think back to the conversation. Okay, I have the good of that, and then I take on some of the things that I never had that I saw in the Western friends family dynamics. So one of the things that when people ask me, what are your long-term plans now that you have kids, because that's the next milestone people will have to decide in terms of, do I stay in Asia or do I move back to wherever home is?
Right. Toronto in your case,
Toronto in my case. I think, you have a plan. You have a general idea of what might be ideal, but the truth is you don't know.
Yeah.
The truth is that's just a thought.
And shit happens,
Stuff changes all the time. I thought I was going to leave within a year or two, and 18 years later, here we are talking to each other.
Dude,
right?
I'm the same. Like, I know the date I fucking met you. I met you at the Sinan Boxing Cat.
We were doing
that was like month 2 of me in Shanghai. Like month 2. Can you imagine that?
You were there for that very epic 12-round challenge.
Yo, this is a fucking scam. You can say this now. Okay?
You are one of the.
No. Man.
You're one of the 2 probably memories of me where I saw. I was like, that guy's not gonna make it.
No, there's no way.
When I said that guy isn't making it, that guy, which in this case is you, one other, refused to take any advice from me. It's just like, no, I got this.
Yeah,
you don't need to give me any advice.
Your advice was like, listen, it's not an alcohol issue; it's a quantity of water.
Yeah.
I was like, Lee, listen, I'm sober, bro. I got this, right?
Like, you don't know how much I drink, but don't worry, you're not the only person. But I just mean like the sheer confidence. So another guy who's also actually a very good friend of mine to this day, he was the other guy that I'm talking about where, I remember he was first 3 months of us in the Yongfu location. And he came in with a bunch of people, and he was new to Shanghai too. And he was doing the 12-round challenge. He's playing pool at the same time. He's going around choosing everybody. I'm like, bro, that's not the strategy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, everybody who tries a 12-round challenge, I want you guys to have the best possible chance of succeeding. I'm going to tell you right now, that's not a good thing. When you're moving around, letting all the beer move.
A lot of liquid.
You don't want to, he's like, you don't even know. And then 4 beers later,
bro, I think I got to 6, relatively acceptable, not good, relatively, I'll still make it home, right? And I think it was like 7 or 8, and it gets incrementally worse.
And because the beer just literally, you feel it filling up in your system.
Is these 16 ounce, I think? Right?
They're about 500 mil, so 20, more closer to 20. But
I remember one of the things you said was like, listen, this is like 3 liters of liquid. Like, forget the alcohol. Just drink 3 liters of water right now. And I'm like, I got this. Don't worry.
Well, you're not the only one guilty of having a lot of faith in yourself, But I feel like.
Did you ever do that?
I didn't really.
Okay.
The only time I did it was because a lot of our staff said, "Well, you got to try it once."
Sure. Yeah, you should, of course.
And then I said, "No, I don't need to try it because I know I'm not going to do it."
Yeah.
And I've seen enough people do it where I understand it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And Kelly said she's going to do it.
No.
And Kelly said, well, if I'm going to do it, you really don't have an excuse not to do it.
Right.
I was like, fine.
How far did Kelly get?
So, against my will, I'm here. Kelly's here. And our manager of the Yongfu location at the time, the 3 of us decided to do it together. And, we're doing beers together. And, we finished our second. Kelly, as you're allowed to do in the 12-round challenge, says she needs to go to the washroom.
Sure, yeah.
And then we had people chaperone
for whatever reason, right?
For whatever reason,
we're not talking about peeing.
It's fine. Just don't throw up, right?
Sure,
Then we have chaperone go with her to make sure she's not throwing up. I keep drinking, and I finished my 3rd. I'm about on my 4th, and on my 4th, I'm already feeling like, because I understand the pace that you're supposed to keep, so I'm trying to stick to the.
It's
blueprint.
Under 1 hour. We should add that, right? You get 1
hour.
No,
2 hours.
Oh,
you get 2 hours.
Yeah,
but the blueprint for most people's success We don't run this anymore because it just gets too messy.